Hello coders, welcome to another How to Code Well live stream on Twitch. I hope you're all doing well. It's Friday. It is 7:31 in the morning, British summertime. I have just spilled coffee on my desk, so please bear with whilst I just mop up this puddle of coffee on the desk. Gosh, my table is going to be caffeinated. Okay, today we're going to be focusing on the insert queries. The insert queries are the queries that were breaking yesterday when we were changing the where clause. This is because we're moving from the question mark to the colon in the parameterized queries. And some of the things are still using question marks, but some of the things are using colons, and it gets a bit of a mess. Let's just get straight to the browser. I just want to show you something. This is an article from phpdelusions.net. It's a very good introduction to the different types of parameterized queries that we can run. They're called positional placeholders and named placeholders. This is what I mean by question marks versus colons. So the positional placeholders are based upon the position in which you put the question mark. So each of these question marks relate to one of these, right? So question mark, question mark, question mark. That would be the first one, the second one, and the third one. Therefore, these are the values that you would execute with these. However, we're moving away from this and we're going into named placeholders. And named placeholders are it's a little bit more easier, I think, to use personally, because you're actually, supplying the name. So when you're looking at big queries, you know exactly what it is that you're trying to bind to that particular placeholder. So these are the placeholders. This is an associated array, and you're putting in the placeholders like so. So this is what we're going to be playing with. This is what we're going to be dealing with, because if I go to the code, here we can see that what I've done is this morning I went into the Docker machine and I opened up the container and I ran those tests, and you can see that the expected result is actually wrong, because the expected result is the old result, and what we're actually getting is these named parameters. But these named parameters are actually wrong as well, because they're the wrong names. This should be colon reference and colon total. So there is a couple of failures that we need to focus on. It's not just this particular expected result. It's also the actual result is wrong as well. So let's go and take a look at these queries. There's a few of them. And I'm going to try and get as through as much as I possibly can do today. But as always, if you're watching and you've got any questions as we go, please dive in and let me know. And also let me know where you're watching from as well. That'd be fantastic to hear from you. So, okay, we'll focus on this one first. This is the test, insert, or update invoice with status. We commented out a whole bunch of code here, but we'll work through that. We'll work through that soon. Okay, so this is the test insert. This is the query builder test. This is the actual unit test that we're working through. And where would that live? That would be DB tests, DB connection test, query builder test. It was right in front of me. And this is, which line is this? This is 166. So here we go. This is the thing, I believe. So where we're putting in question marks, we really need to be putting in named places. So this is actually reference. And what I usually do is I usually name the placeholders to be the name of the field. It makes things a little bit easier. Of course, however, if you're using a large query and you are joining across multiple tables, then there are things that you can't do, like the IDs, because you'll have two different IDs. So perhaps in some cases what I've done is I've prefixed these named placeholders with perhaps the table name or something that to denote that that is the table name. Okay, so insert into reference total vat status, and then these are the values. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So we create a new status, we create a new invoice, and then we're basically setting this up to run. And what we need to do is we need to consider, we need to go to insert or update. The data is the data that is supplied. Now that is an issue because it should actually be called the fields. So I think what we need to do is we need to alter this a little bit to supply both the fields as well as the values. Let's just run this as a unit here. Okay. So this is the alteration that we've done, and as you can see, this is the issue here. So let's have a little think. Let's have a little think. How is the best way to supply this? Because you could say, well, what we could do, excuse me, is we could use a similar thing to, if I go back to the browser, to here, where we're actually supplying the data. And these are the placeholders. So perhaps we can look at that. Maybe that's probably the best way to go, to sort of refactor this a little bit. Not it's more of a restructure, to be honest. So therefore these would become the placeholders. So reference, total, and VAT. That is exactly what's going on here. Reference, total, and VAT. Plus, I think I believe we have the status here as well, which we do. Okay. So with that in mind, then, if we're saying that data becomes an associated array where the key is the placeholder and the value is the value that we're going to supply to the field, then we can take a look at this a lot slightly differently. So I think this is running off of, this is insert into, isn't it? So if we go to insert, here we go. So we have data and data, so perhaps we've got a problem here. So we have, just having a look at this. So we have data field, right. Okay, so the question is, if I was to change, so that becomes the field which is here. I see. I see. Yeah, I see what's happening. We're muddling this up. This here is actually how you set, how you update, not how you insert. Because notice with the insert, it's slightly different. We have all the field names in a bracket, in brackets like so. Then we have value. I think that should be values or value. And then we have another bracketed part here with all of the placeholders. So it is very much different to this. So we can't really use this mechanism, unfortunately, when we're doing, because that like I said, this is specifically for the update, which is here. We are dealing with the insert. So let me think. Let's change, this really shouldn't be called fields. This should really be called, that should really be called something else. Let me call this update. Well, I'll tell you what, let's focus on, let's not break the update. Let's just copy that. Do what we need to do. So this is fields. This is going to be inserted data. And what we do here is, instead of having field and blah, 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 we just have colon and then value. So one could argue that if we're just dealing with this portion of the string, we could just do inserted placeholders. And then what we do is we loop over for each one of these placeholders. Sorry, excuse me, I shouldn't have copied that. For each one of these data as field, that should actually be called as placeholder. Well, actually, there's an even better way of doing this, isn't there? Of course, there is. We could, because we only care about the keys, because the keys are the associated placeholders. So we could just pull out the array keys. We could just go placeholders. Sorry, I had to look at my keyboard then. Placeholders is equal to array keys passing in the data. And then what we do is we do for and then it's placeholders. No, for I is equal to 0, and then it's count. Sorry, no, it's not. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Maybe it would be better to do it in a for each. I'm just trying to think. No, maybe not. Maybe that would work. Okay, let's just ignore that for a minute. So it's for I is equal to 0. I is less than the count of placeholders. Then I plus plus. If I is greater than 0, then we put in a question, a comma. So we can do SQL is equal to ... or dash, or nothing, I should say. Whoops. Copy that. SQL is then concatenated to that or that. And we also need to put in the actual placeholder itself, right? So we need to do SQL is equal to, and it is colon equals. Sorry, no, it's not. Of course it's not. It's equals colon. And then you put in the name of the placeholder. So that's placeholders, and then I. Okay, so what we are doing here essentially is we're saying, well, we have the SQL, and we could actually just do that to start that off, because what we want to do is build out this part. So we're going to do SQL is that for, and then we're loading this up. This also needs to be SQL 2. Whoops. Like that, and then what we do is return that. We don't need any of this gumph. Yeah. That looks good. Oh, sorry, we don't need to do that. Because that was the question mark. We don't need to do that. Okay, so inserted placeholders, we copy that. In the insert, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to not bother with the brackets here, because what we want to do is just focus on the placeholders. We don't want to be focusing on how the placeholders are constructed. Something a bit like that, right? Oops, that's undefined, isn't it? There we go. I was wondering why that was red. Okay, so now what we can do is copy that, go into the insert here. So where we got insert into, and then we got the table names, we do have the brackets here, which is great. We can change that to become inserted placeholders. But that's actually fields, because it is actually the fields that we want to deal with. But what we need to do is supply value. So we go boom, 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 value, open up the brackets, close them down, whoops, to concat, self. If I can find the F on the keyboard, that would be lovely. And it is inserted placeholders, passing in data. Okay, all right. So SQL is insert into the table name, then that becomes the fields that we're inserting into. Then this becomes the inserted placeholders. So let's run this and see what is the output. Okay, so we now have this output, which which is wrong, of course. It's backwards. So let's take a look at that. So this is, I think this is because, yes, this needs to be at the bottom, which it was before when I was using the numbered placeholders, the positional placeholders. All right. So of course, because we're not requiring an equal sign here, we don't need to have that at all. We do, however, when we do an update. So let's run that. All right, so this is slightly better. We've got reference, total, VAT, and status ID. We need to be careful though, because there is no space in here, but there seems to be a space there. So let's take a look at that. That's up here. Insert where? Yeah. So let's bring that back. Actually, no. Let's keep. Yeah, no. Let's bring that back. Let's bring that back. Yeah. Let's keep some consistency going. Run this again. Okay. Okay. So now we have reference. We have total. We have VAT, and we have status, and they are pretty much the same, which is great. Than that. Now we need to work on this thing. This thing is different because this is the fields that we're adding, and the fields are wrong because we are also supplying the values, and that's not what we need to do. But we need to be very careful because the update here, the update needs to be slightly different. I'm gonna just tidy up a bit of work, I think, by just renaming fields, I think, to something else. So this is update. This is update placeholders, because we are dealing with this, the field and its value, right? So we will, because we've basically changed this. We need to test that as well, which we do when we do the update. Okay, so we want to have another static thing. It's very similar to here, actually. In fact, let's do it in the for loop. I'm not, there's no point in doing it in a for each loop if there's no need to worry about the actual values of the arrays. We only have to deal with the keys, right? Array keys. Okay, so for, and then we loop through that. This needs to be updated. This needs to be fields. Let's just call this fields. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're looping over the placeholders, and we are giving question mark equals. And if we look at on the browser, where is the browser going? Here we go. If we look at the insert values here, it is just name, surname, and field name. There is no prefixes. There's no colons. There's no question marks. It is just the field names. So it's slightly simpler. It's a little bit easier because we don't need to worry about this stuff here. We just need to worry about the mechanics of all of that. Now, looking at all of this, there seems to be a lot of code that is very, very similar. I have literally just copied this function and removed a single 1, 2, 3, 4 characters. So there is a requirement for refactoring. Right, let's just make sure it works first. So we have self fields and then so forth. So let's run this. Okay, insert into reference, total, VAT, and status. These aren't lined up. These aren't lined up because we're not putting these in backticks. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's see if that's any different. Reference, we seem to have 2 backticks there. Whoops. Okay, here we go. It's looking a little bit more the same on these 2 statements. So reference, total, VAT, status, we have a problem here. We've got this extra space going on here. That's not good. So that's in update. Here we go. Just there. Yeah. All right. Let's run this. Whoops. Right. Okay. The last thing is that we also need to have that semicolon on the end to denote that that query is finished. And there we go. We can now move on to the next broken test. Now, the next broken test is going to be a little bit easier, I hope. Touch wood, touch my coffee spilt wood on the desk here, because we've already dealt with the pattern that we were playing with on the insert query. Good morning, Sabi. Hope you're well. Hope you're well. What a fine morning it is. Yeah. Okay, so we can get rid of all of this horrible, messy stuff. Off you go. Off you go. Commented code that you've got in your repo for yonks and yonks and yonks. If it doesn't give you any kind of indication as to why it's there, remove it, because it's not going to be used. I'm like with my comments. I think fewer is more. Personally, but I know that other people like to write comments. But that was just commented out code that didn't do anything, so that was removed. Okay, so the next test here, we have query builder test, insert, test, insert. Here we go, start again. Test, insert, or update with no where clause. Huh. Wow, okay, that's a mouthful. So let's go and take a look at that. That would be in query builder test on 102. Query build test. Here we go. So this is now running the in. Oh, no, that's wrong. Can you see the expected outcome is wrong here? So I would imagine that there might be people watching this and going, well, or watching this from the YouTubes when it's published and archived, like later on, going, well, you just made a bunch of fragile tests there, haven't you? This isn't actually developing anything. You are fixing the tests that you've screwed up. And yeah, I am. I am. But I think it's worth it in the end, especially for my personal confidence. So let's run this. Da 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 da. Okay, nope, that's still not. Oh no, sorry, we are on. We fixed that test. We're now on the other one. Okay, insert customer test. The insert customer test. So that would be in query builder. Insert. Which line is this? 56. Scroll to the next one. That looks okay. Yep, it is pretty much the same. Oh dear. So I mean, you could argue, like, what is the point in this? And really, when you've got two tests that are actually the same, there is no point. There's no point. I think I was just, when I was doing this, and this is good because you get to review this. So let's take a look. Let's review this. Test insert customer. Okay. The other one we did was test insert or update with nowhere clause. So this is insert into with nowhere clause. Insert or into. Scroll up. Right. Okay, there is a difference. There is a very subtle difference. We're calling insert. We're not calling insert or update. So I still think that just due to that subtle difference, we do need to have a test. Also because of the nature of all of this stuff. Because it's like this is like really testing the query builder. And the query builder is quite an integral thing to the thing. To the thing? It's an integral thing. It's an integral part of the system. If you get the query builder wrong, then everything is wrong. So I like to test those a little bit thoroughly. Yeah, long test names are the best test names. Yep, I totally agree, Sabi. Ooh, thank you for that. Command Control click to jump to a line number. You've just made my day a little bit more efficient. Thank you very much, Sabi. I appreciate that. High fives. Boom. That's awesome. Thank you. And hello, CSW Gamer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. Thank you for watching. What an awesome name that is. So, first name, last name, company name. In theory, touch wood, if we run this, we get to the next problem. Ah, dear. Right, okay, insert invoice. Again, there is an issue here. So let's scroll up. I think we are on line 36, which is this one here that I see. Yeah, okay, let's just fix those out. Total. Status. And ID. There we go. Is there anything else broken? No. Oh, awesome. That's brilliant. Okay, that's cool. So there's no other unit tests that are broken, but I've probably screwed up a lot of the acceptance tests. So I tell you what, let's just run the whole thing with the knowledge that there are. Yeah, can you see all of those failures? Yeah. So there are two known issues that are broken anyway, but there is a little bit more than that here. 12 errors and 2 failures. So errors are a little bit more daunting because these are actually PHP problems, right? Yes, these are the invalid parameters. This old chestnut, sonny boy. Okay, so find all invoice items by invoice ID. I got a feeling that you fix one and a lot of the others will just fall like dominoes because they'll be copying the same conventions, and that is the fact that they're copying all the same things is a bit of a code smell in the sense that you could probably refactor all of this. Yeah, this is all the same stuff, isn't it? Really, come on. So let's just focus on one of them for now, I guess. We've got to start somewhere, right? So find all invoice items by ID, by find all invoice items by invoice ID. There we go. So this is obviously an acceptance problem, and this would be running It's an integration test. Sorry, apologies, not an acceptance test. It's an integration test. I tell you what we'll do is, because we ran the units first, right? I just want to run this because it gives me some little satisfaction that all of them passed. We also need to focus on we've got the acceptance. Let's run the acceptance. This should fail a lot. Okay, so we have 5 errors and 2 failures. Let's do the integration, because if you think about how a system is built, right, you would have the units of work, then you would have the integration of the different parts of the system, and then the acceptance would be the sugar on top of the cake. So if we focus on the unit tests, then we focus on the integration tests, and then in theory the acceptance test should pass, because we haven't done anything that changes the acceptability of this system. So if we were to fix the acceptance tests, I would imagine that we would be also fixing the integration tests at the same time, and therefore fixing the integration tests would also fix the acceptance tests. The acceptance tests are failing because the integration tests are failing as well, I think. In this case, this isn't the case in all cases, of course, but the acceptance test is testing a little bit more. The integration is testing the integration between the database and PHP. The unit tests are testing the query builder. They're not actually testing the fact that the query has ran. Okay, integration is a word that I can never spell. So let's all just watch Pete spell this wrong. Integration. Oh no, that did work. Okay, so we got 7 errors, 7 errors. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at some of these things. So we have the DB invoice item entity test on line 155. Okay, if my fat fingers will allow me, I will use the suggestion of Sabi saying Command and Control L to jump to a line number. And get to that. So let's just open that bad boy up. So this is DB. Oops, come on, I can't. No. Don't do that, silly. There we go. So sorry, this is integration. This is in here, and it is DB invoice item entity test on line command. Or is it control? It's Command, Control, L. Shift L. There we go, Command L. There we go, Command L. Okay, go to line number. Oh, you can put in a range or a line and a column. That's clever. So we want to go to 155. I'm not sure that you can actually see this on the stream because I'm not actually showing the whole desktop here, just a window, and I don't think that displays in OBS the actual pop-outs. So, okay, we're on line 155 of DB invoice item entity test. DB invoice item entity test. This is failing, obviously, on the save routine. So if we open the save routine up in the repository here, this is the problem. Well, this is where the problem lies, and I've got a strong feeling, I've got a suspicion that this is because we are passing in array values, and when we're using array values of the data, if we have a look at the data here, this is the array. So we have an associative array, which is fantastic for named placeholders, because these become the names of the placeholders, and these are the values, of course. But because we were using positional placeholders before, we were only caring about the values of the array, right? And therefore, when you run array values, you re-index the array, so you remove all of these keys. This becomes 0, 1, and 2. So I think what we can get away with is just removing data like so. What I also am going to do, actually, let's put that back. Let's just break it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this specific test, I think. So it's the test group is DB invoice item entity find all by invoice ID. We're going to copy that, and in the Docker container, we're just going to run the group. So this is codeception, G, pasting in that, run this, and that should fail. Okay, so now we can really hone down this issue. Okay, so let's take a look at that bug. Where was that? That was in invoice repository. Here we go. So let's remove that and see if this works. No. No, it doesn't. Okay. Invoice, find all invoice items. But I was so confident when I said that. Test all, test find all. Just want to make sure that this is on the right. This is the right thing. It is the right thing, isn't it? It's running save. The error is invalid parameter number. A parameter was not defined. Okay. Because we're doing a save routine, let's remove that blank value. We have reference, total, and VAT. Yes, that is going into the data. Let's take a look at and see what is actually running on here. Find all invoices, because this could actually be something that is a little bit different than just the insert or update, because we have the where clause. And notice the where clause doesn't actually have the named placeholders, which could be an issue. So let's take a look at that. So this is DB item entity test, which is somewhere in all of this. And it is line 181, which is here. Okay. All right. So this is where we're saving the first entity. So it is inserting. It is inserting. I was hoping I could get away with it being something slightly differently. What we could do, I guess, is we could remove. We will remove. Excuse me. No, we shouldn't remove anything, to be honest. So this is creating a new invoice, or instantiating a new invoice. We are getting the invoice manager, and we're saving that invoice. So is this a problem at this point? This is what I'm trying to get to. Let's comment out all of this. This is the problem with some of the integration tests. It's the fact that because you're testing more than one thing, you can sort of like question quite rightly. Well, at what point is this failing? Is it in point A or is it in point B? And this is doing a bit of work here, because we're instantiating a new invoice. We're getting the invoice manager. We're saving it. We're then finding it. Okay. We're then making sure that that is what it says it is. And then what we're doing is we're creating invoice items, 2 of them. And then what we're doing is we're saving those invoice items to the invoice that we've just saved. So this whole mechanics kind of mimics the way the controller would work when we're supplying the form. But my question was to myself really was, at what point is this test actually failing? Is it failing here because this is the save routine, or is it failing when we're saving these 2? Now this says that it is failing at 181, which is down here, right? So it's failing at this point. But I just want to make sure that this is working as expected. So we're going to run the test, and hopefully it will pass. All right. So now we know that this is being saved. All right. We know that that's being saved. The problem, therefore, is at this point where when we've got manager, this get manager, save. All right, so let's uncomment this part out. run that test. Yeah, so now we've got the problem here. All right. Okay, so this is invoice item. Invoice item save. So we have all the data. We have the table name. We have the where clause here, and we also have the ID like so. We can remove this array values, I believe. Yeah, run that, and it passes. Now this is because, and please bear with me on this, I was working with the wrong file beforehand. I was working with the wrong file. The fix is, as I did believe, the fix was to remove the array values. I will explain all of this in just a second in a more of an in-depth kind of manner. But let's just focus on the other tests first. I'll explain all of this stuff at the end in terms of like why we need to remove the array values. But my hunch was correct. So let's just run the rest of the integration tests and see what else is broken. Okay, so we now have 2 errors. Okay, so that's a little bit more manageable. Find all on the find all routine, which I'm guessing is going to be in the repo type, and it's customer repo. I'm thinking that is the culprit. All right. So I'm going to remove that. I'm fairly confident that that is the problem. Let's save this, run that again. Yep, that looks good. And there we go. So why did I come to that conclusion? How on earth did I get to that point? What on earth was I doing? I'm going to drink some more coffee because well, half of it's spilt on the table. Okay, so what happened there? I think what we should do is go back to the browser. This is phpdelusions.net. Whoever wrote this needs to be very proud of themselves, because it's a very good article on the difference between placeholders, named placeholders, and positional placeholders. We've gone from positional placeholders to named placeholders. Now, the major difference between these two, not only is the syntax different, you actually have a question mark in the positional placeholders, and you have and instead with the named placeholders, you actually have the name that you want to bind that value to. That's one difference. The other major difference is the fact that when you're preparing when you're executing the data that you supply is in a different format. Because when you're dealing with positional placeholders, it doesn't matter so much. Well, it does matter. It matters a lot, actually, with the data that you supply, but it doesn't really matter in terms of the key that you give it, because the key is going to be using an index, right? So this here would be 0, 1, and 2, and therefore that over here would be 0, 1, and 2. So it's the order in which you supply in the data. Now, when you're dealing with named placeholders, however, it's quite different, because you are giving a name for every placeholder. And these are the placeholders here. And those names are based upon the associative keys. So the name, the surname, and the sex. And these all are placed here as placeholders. So we went from question marks to colon and then the name of the placeholder. This has a lot of significant differences with the actual the code. So if I go into the code here, we can see that we were actually setting up the data as I showed you on that browser. But when we were using positional placeholders, these things we didn't need to worry about. So we just needed to supply an array of 0, 1, and 2, as well as their particular values. And we got around that by using array values in the execute statement here. This is what I removed. So that used to be array values. Now, array values is a very interesting function in PHP. What it does is it re-indexes the array, which means that you can take an associative array and turn that into an indexed array from 0, 1, 2, and 3, and so forth. This means that you are essentially replacing these with the numbers, the indexes 0, 1, and 2. Now, when you try and put that into the query builder is just going to fall on its face, and it's going to fall on its face with that error, because essentially what we're doing, if I go back to the browser because this is a better representation, is we're saying that is 0, 1, and 2, but it's requiring these placeholders. So it's going to go :1 or :0, :1, :2. And it's not going to marry up. It's not going to marry up. So that was the issue. All right, let's go back to the code. What's the time? 8:17. That's not so bad. That's not so bad. Okay, right. So we can remove array values because we don't need that, and we can save this. Run the integrations again. This should all hopefully pass. We're going to run the units again. Just hopefully they will all pass. We haven't done anything silly with that. Okay, let's now run the acceptance tests. If I can find the A on the keyboard and not spell it with an M. Okay, we still have some issues here. We have 2 errors and 2 failures. We do know that there are 2 known issues with the page not found. All right, that we are aware of that, but we've still got these things to contend with. We have invalid parameter number, so we still have some issues rocking up on the acceptance, and I think this is where the acceptance tests are actually passing things down, and they're passing it down in the wrong manner. What we could do is, let's pinpoint these. I mean, I know we've only got 2 issues to deal with, but we've also got 2 known issues, and I don't really want to get those in the mix because that would just be noise. So it is db invoice entity cest. Okay, this is the cest, which is in, we're not in the units, we're not in integration anymore, we're in acceptance. This is db invoice entity cest, and it is on which line? 64, which is just up here. This is the save. All right. Okay, so let's what we can do is pinpoint that test like we've done before. Let's copy that and go into here. -G. Okay, so here we go. We've pinpointed that test that fails. So invalid parameter number, parameter was not defined. Let's take a look at this. So this is failing. What is this test doing? Okay, so this test is instantiating a new invoice. We're setting the invoice up. We're getting the manager, and we're then saving that that invoice. We are also in this test. We're also updating the invoice. Okay, so we can see that is in the database. So IC in database. So this is the acceptance. This is checking the acceptability of this test. It's also making sure that we actually have an ID as well. Then after this, what we do is we get that saved entity. So we when we save it, we return the entity. We are then updating that entity, updating the total and the VAT, and then we're saving it again. So there are 2 areas that could fail. Hopefully it's only one of them. But the way I do this is, like I've shown you before, is let's comment out everything in the second pass. Run this again. Okay. So now that's telling me that the save is working, the insert is working because we are inserting it here. However, the update is failing, right? Because this is what's going on down here. And here we go, that's the issue. If I was to run --debug, we might get some more output that I could use. Okay, so we are connecting to the database. Then we're running that query to select all of the bits and pieces, and then it falls down. Unfortunately, it doesn't show you the point in which it falls down. Unfortunately, it doesn't show you the query, which is the update query, which is the one I wanted to see. Okay. So let's work through this. We want to save this, and we are going to go into here. This is going to supply the data and all these things. Let me think about this for a minute, because what it's doing is it's saying reference, total, and VAT as data, or the status ID, and then it's saying if entity get ID isn't null, then we supply the ID within the where clause. We then get that again, but the problem we have here is when we run the update query, so insert or update, we have update placeholders and then where. So there is something going on in either of these functions that are a bit strange. That's a bit of a tricky one. Because it's not blindingly obvious as to oops, why is that commented out? Oh dear, have I missed that out? Let's just sorry, I'm just backpedaling a bit. I just noticed that was commented out. I didn't put it back. Let's just quickly run that. That is the that is an integration test. Let me just run all those integration tests. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at the stack trace here. Maybe that'll give me a little bit more insight. So I say stack trace, the numbers of things that are used. So we have the invoice repository at 95, the invoice manager at 50, and then we have that, and this is running the update test. So invoice repository on line 95 would be probably where we were before, which is here. And the error is SQL state invalid parameter number, parameter was not defined. So it's either going to be a parameter here, that's wrong, or it's going to be in the where clause, which is there. Right, is there a way we can mimic this? So in the actual failing SEST, what are we doing? We are creating a new invoice, and then we are saving that, and we know that works to this point here. Set saved invoice set save. So all we're doing is we're changing the total and the VAT. We're not actually changing them, let's just change them. So 2 or 3 and 4, that doesn't make sense, but let's just change that to 2. So this strikes me that there's a problem with actually the ID, because if it's saved before without those values, what we could do is we could do a little bit of a cheat, and we could, I'll dump it out. We could dump it out. We could just dump it out to the console here. I could also use debugging and other bits and pieces. So that should hopefully, there we go. This is the actual query that we're running. Ooh, look at that. Invoice set reference is equal to test. That's not good. That's not good. Total is equal to that. That's not good. Yeah, I've got that wrong. I have got that wrong. I have got that wrong. This shouldn't be the value. This should be the named placeholders. So it's a problem with yeah, that's not right. Set reference is equal to, yeah, that shouldn't be the value. That should be the field of the placeholder that we're running. Reference is equal to reference, total is equal to total, VAT is equal to VAT, ID needs to be where we got ID is equal to 1. That's not good. This doesn't fill me full of confidence. Let's see, where are we? Let's insert where. Okay, so that's now passed, but I've got a horrible suspicion that my unit tests are broken. I think, unless I shouldn't have just used, I mean, perhaps I shouldn't have just used a for each, because there's no point in doing a for each for these things. No, they're fine. So there is an argument to say there's no point in doing a for each. We should just use fors, because there's no. If we're just wanting to use the array keys, and it's much the same, this is the argument that I had before with myself. It's like there's a lot of stuff that is very similar here. There is a lot of stuff. So you've got this where clause, and you've got this update placeholders, and you've got this fields, and I think there's another one, inserted placeholders. There's a lot of stuff that is pretty much the same, and I think we need to spend some time. Not today, because it's going on a bit, but I think we need some time to just focus on these things and fix them. The beauty, of course, with writing these tests is that you have you're testing the input, the expected, and the actual. So it doesn't really matter how the mechanics of this works, because we have those tests. So in theory, we should be able to just hack around with all of this stuff. Not worry too much about the tests. Obviously, we'll do it in a sort of a TDD kind of manner, hopefully. But the actual expected result shouldn't change. All right, because we have a test to back those up, that should be okay. Let's just run the acceptance again, the whole thing. Well, I tell you what. I just want to keep checks on the integration test. There is a failure. Yeah, I did think there would be. Okay. Find all invoice items by ID. And this is line 184. So this is a different one. So this, which one was the invoice item entity cest? Invoice. Why can't I see that? It's because I'm looking at integration tests. I need to be in here. DBs, yeah, here we go, blah, blah, blah. To find all invoice items by invoice ID. Is that the badger? That is the badger. Invoice, yeah, line 184. Okay, so these save routines are working, okay, but we are no longer able to do any find bys for this particular one based on there. And the problem is that we have another invalid parameter, blah-de-blah-de-blah. So let's step through that. Well, I shouldn't say step through that. Let's just open that up. Scroll. It's probably something to do with a fetch all. Whoa, no, it's not. No. It is something probably to do with... Find all, where, and... Yeah. This is interesting. Okay, so we have a problem here with the invoice item manager on line 49. And it's running invoice item repository on line 86. We know that when we have a problem here, invalid parameter in a number, we know that there is a problem with the parameters that are being supplied. And we know that this one works, and we know that that one works, right? So we know that some of the finds are actually working. The difference is that we're supplying the invoice ID, right? That's the major difference to this query. I've gone and lost my place, haven't I? Here we are. Let's just comment that out, Mo. I tell you what, let's just run this in isolation. So what is this hyphen thing here? There we go. Hyphen G, paste that in, and we've got a failure. Okay, I do believe it's the find issue, but I just want to double check that this all passes. Which it is. Okay, so it is definitely... And this is the thing, right? When you're doing these things, it's a journey of discovery. You've got to sort of like really be an archaeologist and go, well, the things above me work, so obviously it's something down below. So find all by invoice ID, passing in the ID that we've got here. Find invoice. Find invoice found invoice is coming off of here, off of find one. So we know that that's working, right? I mean, we could, if we wanted to, do a little bit of a... is it CodeCep? I can't remember. CodeCep debug, passing that in. That should, when we run this, return, hopefully. Why did that not return it? I was hoping that would return... Okay, I thought that would return some debug. That's not even returning debug. Interesting. The plot thickens. This is the right test I'm running. DB invoice item find all, yeah. Interesting. Okay, I would have thought that would have printed something out. Oh, of course it won't print anything out because I'm not running it in debug mode, you moron. Silly me. There we go. Hello. So that should now print out the array, or sorry, the object, and we have reference, we have customer, and we have items, but we also have an ID, so we do have that. And I should be able to do get ID. And get ID is returning 1. All right, so I'm confident that whole find one is working as expected. So we have the ID of the found invoice, and then what we do here is we then pass that into the find all by, and we can open that up. And this is doing find all by, and we've got the array where. So that's the table name, and then this is the where clause. All right. We then open that up. We execute the query. I think I understand. That should really be invoice ID. Let me just see, because then we'll tidy that up. I think that's the case. And therefore that needs to be ID. Right. Let me just try that. Yes, it is. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So really what we should do is do data is equal to an array. This data is going to be the name placeholder, right? So that's the associated placeholder, or the associated key. And then the ID we pass in like so. Right, which means that we can now get rid of all of this. Bye-bye. And we can also get rid of all of this. Bye-bye. Okay, why are we executing it twice? That should not be the case. Run that, and it passes. Marvelous, marvelous. Okay, so let's just run all the integrations again. All right, it's always good to go back and just go, have I broken anything else? No. Excellent. Let's just check the unit tests again. Marvelous. Let's now check the acceptance tests. Now we do know, as I have mentioned, there are 2 acceptance tests that are failing. And we know this. This is fine. Well, it's not fine. They are failing, but, you know, they are failing because I haven't done it yet. So, all right, so we have 15 tests, 22 assertions, 2 failures. The failures are the 2, I think. They are the page not found. So we have the page not found, and we have this up here, 404 issues. So yeah, these are the ones that I am aware of. Let's just run all of the tests together. Let's run the whole thing, the whole shebang. Those 2 tests fail, that's fine. There we go. We have 115 tests, 235 assertions, and 2 failures. So that is cool. I would like to get these fixed, these 2 failures fixed, but we will focus on those when we get to the front end of it all. But let's just do a quick recap of the application. It's an invoicing application, and we are building this for an object-oriented course that I'm producing for FreeCodeCamp. There's an awful lot of, as you've seen, places that I do need to refactor and fiddle with. But getting the tests in place is like my foundation stone. Once I have tests that I can repeat, it doesn't really matter about the internals. I can fiddle about with those because I've got 115 tests now, and say 113 of them are passing. This now means that I can do that refactoring if I wanted to, because I know that this is my benchmark. And this is the thing: when you're building a project from scratch, you obviously have no benchmark to begin with. So it's building those test suites to give you that benchmark to then go through. There's a lot of code smell. There's a lot of duplication. There's a lot of areas in this project where I could do better. But you need to have that benchmark in order to say yes, what you have done is actually working. I could, if I wanted to, spend a whole stream just focusing on the whole refactoring of the project, or a couple of streams, or however long it's going to take, without having the tests in place. And then when it comes to actually displaying the front end, it all falls down and catches on fire. That would be because I wouldn't have any tests to back that up. This is the whole, the level of confidence. We've now got this back to a level of stability as we had in the previous week, which is really, really great. And when you do these big refactors or these big changes, it wasn't a refactor. This is a change of using named placeholders. Then it was a big change from named placeholders from positional placeholders. That was a big change, and that changing that broke an awful lot of stuff, right? But now I know that all the tests that I have, all 113 of them, are now passing, and they were passing before I made that switch from positional placeholders to named placeholders, which means now my level of confidence is back where it was, which means that all of these queries are working. Okay, so we have a bunch of routines that we have created. Let's just go through them. We have the save routine. We have the and the save routine will decide whether or not it is an insert or an update, depending on whether or not we have the ID from the entity that was returned. We also have a find all. This is going to find all of the entities from the database, or I should say all of the records that get hydrated to the entities. We also have a find one. Now, a find one will find a single record, hydrate that based upon the ID that you supply. And we also have in invoice item, we have another one, don't we? We have somewhere find all by invoice ID. Now this is going to do a find all by, which opens us up to the possibilities of having other find all by such and such, where we pass in an array of data. This is the thing that drove me to this named placeholders rather than positional placeholders, is because I wanted to define what it was I was searching for. So find all by, and you give it that. And this also has find all, and it has find one, and so forth. So they follow that convention, which is pretty cool. We also have some controllers here. We haven't really played with these in a long time, but these controllers are running off of the request. These are actually working. These are actually being used through this whole acceptance test malarkey. So if I was to run the acceptance, so these acceptance tests are actually not the database acceptance test, but the acceptance tests for say the home page and the invoice page. We are actually hitting the pages, right? So we are actually running the application in the acceptance test, and we are making sure that we can see various things. So when we're on invoice, we can see that this is the invoice dashboard. When we are on invoice and then we pass in the ID, we are on, this is the page for invoice ID 123. So we have the mechanism already for supplying the front end with data, right, based upon the request that was sent, which means now that I can use the find all and the find all bys and so forth, and the find ones based on the request that was sent. So we could, if we wanted to, start working on the front end, which I'm dead excited about. And we can see that, we have some issues here with the page not found and so forth. So I am super duper chuffed with the way this is working. It's taken a long time to get to this point. I do appreciate that. And there has been many decisions that have been changed across, the whole journey of this thing. But I hope that one could appreciate that this is a very raw, live stream. I'm thinking that the architectural decisions as I'm going by it A lot of people will probably look at this and go, this is terrible work. And I will look at this again in months to come and go, this was terrible work. That's just the nature of it. That's just the nature of it, because you're always constantly improving and bettering oneself. I have to make a decision now. Am I going to refactor what I've got, or am I going to focus on the front end? And I'm going to make that decision probably over a couple of cups of coffee in a darkened room and make that decision, because there are some things that I do want to refactor and make nicer. And I think for this course that I need to show that level of refactoring. But on the other flip side of this, I want to get this course done. So it's the case of, do I refactor after I do the front end, make it a little bit more tidier? I don't know. Could this be something that I do in another sort of project? I'm not sure. So I need to go away and think about all of those things, I think. But I'll let you guys know over Twitter and Instagram and all that jazz. So if you're not following on there, then please do so. Okay, before I make a dash, let's just move my cup of coffee over there, which is now very cold. I want to just show you something. So on the browser here, there is the website that I have created. This is a Gatsby website. This is a Gatsby.js site called learnobjectorientatedphp.com, all one word, learnobjectorientatedphp.com. This is where the course will be. It's a course for FreeCodeCamp, but I'll embed it and put it in here. And if you click on the live coding the course, you can actually see the whole all of the episodes, that all the streams. So if you're watching here, hello. This is going to be a bit of a browser inception here, but you can see all of them. I need to update this because we only got to 35, and I think we're up into the 40s. But I do archive these streams to YouTube later. So once the streams are done, a couple of days later, I'll then archive them. And the reason why I do this is because Twitch deletes the streams from my tier at least every 2 weeks, which is a bit of a shame, really. So I've archived all of this stuff. To check out all the links as well, on here. I should say as well that today is Friday. Friday we have a podcast, which is super awesome. If you haven't done so already, please do check that out. There is some amazing guests on the show. I personally have learned tremendous lots from the guests that I've had on. Extremely interesting and fascinating people with extremely interesting stories about web development and programming. It's not just developers on. We also have people who are recruitment agents. We have people who are building projects for the community, who are perhaps also people who are hiring managers, people who are directors of big companies that have web development systems. We talk to people who are advocates of certain projects, so today we have a podcast. Today we have David Darnes on the show, and that will be later on today. And he's the developer advocate at Ghost, which is a publication platform. So do check that out. That's howtocodewell.fm. You can also search for How to Code Well on things like Spotify and iTunes, and wherever you get your podcast player from, you can find How to Code Well. And if you can't find How to Code Well on that platform, send me a message over Twitter, over a DM, and just say, sort it out, and I will. But okay. Enough of that. Unfortunately, on Sunday, I'm not going to be able to stream because I'm spending some time off, which is, I don't need to apologize for that really, but that's what I'm doing. So I won't be streaming on Sunday, but I will be back next week. Do check the Twitch channel out, as well as Instagram and YouTube, and Twitter for the announcement of that. I've got to decide which day I'm streaming on. It's probably going to be either Tuesday or Wednesday next week around the same time at 7:30 BST. But for anyone who's coding away this weekend, just enjoy it. Try and enjoy things that aren't coding this weekend. Have a little bit of downtime. It's really good for your soul. And Anyway, enough of that. Have a good weekend ahead, and I will see you again soon. Do check out the podcast if you haven't done so already. Happy coding, everyone. Have a good weekend. And be kind to each other. See you soon. Cheers. Bye.